This is on reputation management. Our speaker is William Deantonio. He's the president and CEO at Reputation 911, which is a Massachusetts-based reputation management firm that he founded in 2010 to help individuals and businesses restore, promote, and protect their online reputation and privacy. With a degree in criminal justice, William has more than 9 years of previous experience as a personal and corporate private investigator here in Boston. William, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. I think this should work. Good morning, everyone. Back in 2010, there weren't a lot of people who thought reputation management wasn't going to be a need. I have a few quick statistics that I'm going to run through. 1996, attorneys were using LexisNexis. And that's when, in 1996, it came out with an Office suite where you could go on and actually search the World Wide Web. In 1998, there were 600 searches being done on LexisNexis versus Google in 1998, September 4th, they came out, they were doing about 500 searches a day. From there, 10 years later, 2008, 2 billion searches a day. And now in 2008, we're at 2 trillion searches a day on the internet. So it's gone a little bit from then. I was a private investigator in Boston for 9.5 years. When I started out in 1990, I could go down to the registry with a license plate, hand it to them. They would hand me back the person's address, name, all their information. We were only able to do 6, so what I did when I was a young investigator was I would stay there all day and do my 6, go back, do my 6. This is before we had anything in computers or anything else. We also used Dun & Bradstreet, and we used LexisNexis. So from there to where we are today is a whole different world. 2010, we started the company. 2011, we became incorporated. We wanted to make sure it was going to work. We wanted to make sure there was going to be a need. One of our first clients was a judge, and she was on a site called the Robing Room, where judges get judged. And she was up for an appointment, and the reviews on that from attorneys and defendants were not good, we're not flattering. We were able to find out the 2 attorneys that own that site, talk with them, explain our side, and get those reviews removed. So that was one of our very first clients, and we realized we had something. From that, we then started working with individuals and businesses, but it was more celebrities and it was more professional individuals that hadn't trickled down yet to the everyday person. So just like when Twitter came out, if everyone remembers Twitter, it was first celebrities. Everyone's like, what are we doing with this thing? Now everyone then started using Twitter. So what we saw back in 2010, 2011 was social media was the fuel, the jet fuel that was going to then bring on this whole new generation that every one of us is going to become a brand of one if we haven't already. And any one of us, just like you can have your 15 minutes of fame, can have your 15 minutes of shame, and it might not even be anything you did. And that's what I'm going to show you today with some of our clients. I'm going to walk you through, hopefully pretty quickly, what you can do before a crisis hits, if you know or not, what you can do during, and then what you can do after. And I'm going to give you some good tips along the way that you can take with you. And then we'll hopefully have enough time for questions. That being said, we had a lot of different things for when people said, what, Reputation 911, what is that? Is it online reputation management, privacy? Finally, we came up with, we make you look good online. That took a long time to get to that. I used to sit there and my elevator speech was horrible and I just was blabbing on and I couldn't really get to that. Someone else got to that. We actually were at the Cambridge Innovation Center. That's where we used to work, and then from there we moved out to Mendon, Mass, Hopkinton and then Mendon. What is reputation management? Reputation management, also known as ORM, so you might hear it as ORM. Online reputation management is the ongoing process of monitoring and managing your online search results to shape and influence how the public perceives you online. This is what's important in your terms, not in others, for individuals, businesses, and brands before, during, and after a crisis hits. So what we feel is Google, you heard how many searches they're doing. They can't get down to the individual. That's our job. And what our job is then is to communicate to Google on your behalf what those search results should look like. So I think up until recently, what we've been trying to do is communicate to the public. We've been trying to get out there and send a press release or send something that the public can see. Our approach is a little different. We communicate to Google. If we can tell Google what is going on and show them through our different proprietary process, it can then give strength to the articles that we want to see on that first, second, and third page of a business, a brand, or an individual search results. What is personal reputation management? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to briefly touch on personal, business, and brand. Personal reputation management allows an individual to take back control of their online image and portray themselves in a more accurate and positive manner. Today, everyone is a brand of one. What used to be exclusive for celebrities and sports stars is now commonplace for all. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of some of our clients and what we've done. We had a doctor in Rhode Island that approached us 4 or 5 years ago. And he said, Bill, I'm getting these bad reviews, and they're not coming from my patients. We dug into it with him, and come to find out he was right. They were coming from a competitor. Depositioned the competitor. Under oath, the competitor admitted to writing the reviews. I was depositioned in that case to speak to the level of what he lost over the 3 or 4 years that those reviews were online. So if you think about it in that term, how much you're spending month over month, year over year in marketing dollars just to be the first one to be turned down because a competitor wrote a review about you that people are seeing, that's why we're here. Those reviews were taken off, and that case was settled. Couple other ones, real quickly. We had a client, and I'll talk more about this later. We had a client that was voted the worst CEO of the year. And before we came on the scene, the PR strategy was to put out a lot of good press on how he wasn't the worst CEO of the year. And so we had a lot of press on how he wasn't the worst CEO of the year, and we had a lot of press on how he was the worst CEO of the year. We showed up on the scene and we made him no longer a CEO, because that was a negative keyword that Google was figuring out for him. So he got a promotion. If you want to look at it that way, he became a president. And now he's the president. That everything went on his site and all his social media as the president, no longer the CEO, and that disassociated that issue. That, with a lot of other work, pushed that away. So that was just one strategy that we used. We also work with agencies like Homeland Security and the military. We do more of privacy for that, removing information off the internet. If you could imagine, you don't want people to be able to look you up and find out where your family is, things like that. And so I know in the news, everyone thinks the media is one way. They're actually, if you sit and talk with them and explain to them why you're doing what you're doing, they're good to work with. They understand. They're people too. So for some of our cases, it was, some of these agents were passing out water back in their high school days or were helping out in the community, and those articles, their name had to be redacted. So you could still have the article, it was just redacting the identifying information that went back to them. By doing that, that would then have no sign for them online. Same thing in the military. There's a lot of people who retire from the military and then they go overseas. They go into Germany, they go into different countries, and God forbid something happens where someone is able to search them and then they see that tie back to the military, they could be in danger with the climate we're in. So by being able to explain to people why you're removing that, it makes sense. They don't want to be liable on the other end if something does happen, and they're on the record as saying no to that request. And we make sure they understand that they are saying no to that request and what can happen. So that being said, you might have saw recently with Twitter with one of the celebrities, same thing, and she had an automated response, and then they are now looking at that. So I think people are now taking this much more seriously what's on there and how it affects each one of us. Okay. Oh, and one last one we had. We had a woman, she was top 10 Miss USA last year. She had some pictures that were taken by a group that were not supposed to be published, and they were, and we were able to remove those. After that, she was also in some pageants on Miss Teen USA, and she said, you know what, I want to have a different persona online. So we were able to bring up the pictures that were more appropriate to who she was now, not before. So images are something we work with as well. Okay, gonna move right along. Business. This is from one of our old press releases. Tweets fly like bullets as businesses and professionals are now robbed of their revenue and reputation while review sites prosper as the new gun dealers in today's Wild West known as the internet. Unlike traditional advertising, which has a short shelf life, say a press release has a news cycle, reviews can live forever online, like I said about that doctor, unless you go and take care of it. So now, let me just stick with some businesses for a minute. We had a business that was robbed. They did nothing wrong. People were duct taped. It was a scary situation. After that, all the press covered it, and they did exactly what they would. They didn't mean any harm to the business, but then the business lost 80% of its business because people were afraid to go there. So that's a case in well that if you just can take out the business and say it's a Boston-based business that this happened to versus the name of the business, those articles then go away. So it's really understanding how Google is seeing this information and how you can disassociate it and help that business or that brand. Another one we had was during the presidential inauguration. An individual was not at the inauguration. However, with Google image recognition, people felt or thought right away online that it was this person at there. And so with that, it affected the individual, it affected the new CEO who had only been at this company for 2 weeks, and it affected the company. In that case, and we worked with the Anti-Defamation League and the local police who issued a statement saying she was not there, but there were still some hate groups and hate sites that kept her information on those sites that we had to get in there and work to remove. So again, a lot of people were really good about it once you approached them and explained it, but there was an agenda, and here was someone who wasn't even at that event who found herself overnight in her 15 minutes of not shame, but of a crisis. Okay, what is a brand? We're kind of proud of this as a company. A little company in Boston, Massachusetts, Cambridge. If you were to search on the internet right now, what is brand reputation? We're in the Google Zero position, which is the definition for the term. So at the top of the search results, it would say brand reputation refers to how a particular brand, whether an individual or a company, is viewed by others. A favorable brand reputation means consumer trust. Your company and feel good about purchasing your goods and services. What we've seen over the last 5 years is companies that do not have a good brand reputation online are paying double, if not more, for advertising, AdWords, marketing, because when you're searching for businesses now, they'll show the 5 and 4 stars before they show the 3 and 2 stars. So people are now finally realizing as much money as they're putting into marketing and advertising, they now need to have a good reputation, or they're just the first one that's passed over. All right, for our clients, brand reputation, our clients, okay. Before a crisis hits, reputation management can strengthen an individual's business or brand online presence and leverage it to protect when that crisis hits. Here's where I'm going to give you some tips and some things we can do. So the first thing is strengthening your online presence. We just had a builder who had no online presence. He had no online presence for 20 years. And then someone came out and wrote a bad review about a development. The particulars were that they wanted a wolf kitchen and all these extra upgrades, so then the price of the house went up about 100 grand. However, they thought they were still going to get it at the spec price. Their version went out on a review site. However, the builder wasn't able to kind of give their reversion back, and yet they've had about 20% of the people in the building project backing out now. So there does come a time, and the reason I am here today is because we see about 90% of our businesses after the fact, and the only way we can change that is to get out in front of people and explain to them what building a good online reputation in the beginning would do. Document your online presence, search location, etc. This is really important. Everyone out here, if you look at your individual self, your business, or your brand, you can take a look and see who's searching you, how many searches a month you're getting, from what locations, from what devices. That's very important to know, especially going into a crisis, because once you're in that crisis, you want to know where that's coming from and then be able to combat it. So that's something we can do. Cleaning up any past or current negative mentions, obviously that's important because that's something that's they're going to gravitate to. In the earlier discussion, they talked about Belichick and a playbook. You're giving your playbook to the media or the press. Everything that's online is fair game. So if you can shape that narrative versus someone else before or during, you're in a much better position. Claim all your web domains. You can go to GoDaddy with a coupon for $2. You can get yourname.com. You can get a service.com. It might be something that your law practice does. But that's a very valuable asset to have. Because when you come to us and you're in a crisis, one of the things we can leverage is we can do www.yourname.com, we can make a website, and we can get that in that very first position on Google and then attach things to it which help control that page. However, what we're now finding is those names are getting bought and taken by other people when there is a crisis, so you could have your foe owning your name. www.jebbush.com. If you had done that redirect, it went to Donald Trump during the election. So I'm just saying, okay? Copyright your images. If you went out and you're a CEO or you're in charge of your law practice or whoever, and you go for very short money and get a copyright of your image and you put that on LinkedIn and all of your social media, when the media takes that image and puts it on their newspaper, they're getting a call from us or from you saying, you just published a copyrighted image, and we can take that image down. What else happens in that conversation is, if you take the whole article down with the image, we find no need to then go after any damages. So again, a very useful tool to have in your pocket. We then had a couple other things as far as if you're expecting a crisis, extra measures you can take. So sometimes we do have a few calls, hopefully more in the future, where someone says, hey, this is going to be coming down the pipe, what can we do? Take down images and change profile pictures to side views. Google facial recognition isn't perfect. It's really not good on a side portrait. So most people might not notice that. We do. So if you have a side view and that picture is the one that then gets put in all the negative news articles, it won't come back to you or your brand or your company. So that's one of the tips we found that has worked very well. Hold off on any major business announcements or launches, and hold off on any brand logos. Same thing. If you had a new logo, they take that logo, now Google associates it. So it's no longer just the content that's in the articles, it's the images and the logos that all get associated. And the same with the business announcement. That's the playbook. So if you do a business announcement, you put something out there, everything is fair game. And what we're seeing, especially for individuals now, their whole life story, everything they've done is starting to be put in these articles, and then that's off limits for us. If we go out there and start writing and talking about that, it's only going to strengthen those other articles, and I'll explain that. During a crisis, reputation management during a crisis can mitigate online impact by disassociating the crisis away from an individual, business, or brand. Here's some of the steps to take during the crisis. Analyze what is being said and searched about you as it relates to the crisis. How are you being associated to that crisis? Including Google autocomplete and searches related. We will talk about that later, but one of the things we do when we want to measure what's the level of the crisis, is we look in, when you type in your name or your business name or your brand, you take a look and you see what's those auto suggestions. And you can see it with whether it's sports teams or celebrities, those things can change pretty quickly. With us, they don't change as much. And one of the things we look at is our crawl rate. So Google has a crawl rate for each individual, how often they're going to look at your information, how often is it going to be fetched and then put into the search engines. We can speed that crawl rate up, and we can slow that crawl rate down, but when a crisis hits, it's off and running. So being able to look at the autocomplete and the searches related and being able to get some good searches that you want to push towards your brand when and away from the crisis, that's what we try to analyze and help with. Searching from different geographic locations, is it a local crisis or is it a national? And that, again, will also help us to look at how people are what information are people finding when they search from you from Texas, Boston, or from the UK for that matter. And then, obviously, disassociating yourself from the negative keywords, individual services and images, that I couldn't stress enough. In the case of the worst CEO of the year, he then became a president, and he's no longer the CEO. Google saw them both as different. Tip, changing website text to a PDF image on the crisis topic. We hear this a lot. I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer. We practice personal injury. We can't take that off our website. So this is now the push and pull. We say, if you want to get rid of this crisis, this is what you're going to have to do. They say, well, we can't stop doing our business. So one of the things you can do is you can make it a PDF on your website and on some of your other sites where Google doesn't see it, the image. They don't see the text. They just see the image. And you can alt text that to say anything you want. So now you're controlling the narrative. They go in, they just see the image, but everyone searching sees you're still in business and it's still it's still that service or that profession that you're doing. Client example, another client example, we had a doctor who had a crisis. Again, everything, all charges were dropped, dismissed, all of that. It actually wasn't even charges, it was just a crisis. It was in his first 4 pages, every result was that crisis. We took a look and we just said, look, we understand you're still going to be a doctor, but we got to change the narrative. And there's a term out there that some people use, it's called newsjacking. Taking a look at what else is in the news that you can implant yourself in or that you can become a part of. What's very important with this is you have to already be there or you have to have something that relates to it. You just can't go and show up at the party without an invite. So that being said, this doctor did a lot of work with Doctors Without Borders. So we were able to talk about Doctors Without Borders right at the time the Ebola crisis was going on. And he came out and was saying, look, it's very important to be able to go fight these diseases in other countries so they don't come back. And if you remember, everyone had that couple of days of panic. We saw the plane on CNN with the doctor who had Ebola coming back in. So within no time, we had changed the narrative and the search results, and they were all about Doctors Without Borders and Ebola and not about the past crisis he had. After a crisis is when reputation management is often used to restore one's online image by removing and suppressing the negative, unwanted, and/or inaccurate results and links that were generated during the crisis. One of the things we look at is what's behind the curtain. Who's linking to these stories? So for instance, we had a client that was a famous person and he had a bankruptcy. And the bankruptcy firm was so proud that they were able to get this bankruptcy for X amount of dollars wiped out that they put it on their site. And so by doing that, it then brought up the search results for our client. It didn't stop there. Then every other bankruptcy attorney in the US thought we can link to that story because we can show our clients what we can do. That then caused a chain reaction to where you had all these links going to that story. So I think where our clients and a lot of people are upset at the press or the media who wrote the story, there are so many other people involved who got that story up to that point. So what we were able to do is contact a lot of those bankruptcy attorneys and say, look, this might have been, indirectly related, you weren't trying to bring this up and hurt our client, but it has. So just by helping them and talking to the webmaster and having a non-follow link put on that story, they could still link to the story, or they could still put it as a PDF, and we helped them with either, but no longer did that link juice go to the story, thus it didn't keep the story up in our client search results. Here are a few of the other things. Do a full negative keyword analysis of all the unwanted articles and links. It's very important to understand what's linking in, what's linking out. You might need to pause a certain part of your service. There are times where we had a construction company in Boston where, say, digging was what was involved in the crisis, and it's their main business. 90% of our business bill is digging. We can't not talk about digging. Okay? I'd really like to talk about snow removal. That's 10% of your business, but you have no bad links to snow removal. And so by talking about snow removal and making those pages PDFs for the digging, they still are, and they didn't need to worry about marketing. So it was just understanding what the client's needs were and him understanding what our needs were to make the reputation management and crisis go away. And that's really the toughest thing in our business, is understanding how to work through it on both ends. And again, some are easier than others. Creating content with positive keywords and associations. Refrain from searching yourself online. This is probably the biggest thing. We are our own worst enemies. Sports Star has a arrest on drugs, marijuana, whatever. Dallas, Texas. For the next week and a half, him, his wife, everyone in the family. So-and-so, Dallas, Texas, drug arrest. Searching, searching, searching. Hey, it's in the autocomplete now. Hey, it's in the searches related. Go figure. So we have software. We can send reports in real time to clients of what their search results are without actually contaminating those results or shaping those results. So build and promote your online presence with close-ended sites where you can control the conversation. There are a lot of high-ranking close-ended sites that you can put yourself on as a business professional or a business. A site like Crunchbase has a great domain authority, has a great page authority. You control the narrative, you control the conversation, but you have no one coming to that site asking you, hey, how's that crisis going? That isn't happening. And we'll talk a little more about this, but you want to be more, when you're in a crisis and you're now digging out of it, you want to be more informational versus conversational with how you approach your communication with Google and with the public. If you can put out information versus conversation, that's going to help mitigate and get you through the crisis. And that is it, be more informational versus conversational, including social media. Social media is a correlation, not a causation of search results. We get a lot of clients who try to do it themselves before they come to us to fix the crisis, and they use social media. Google has stopped using social media as a driver for search results. You could be in a relationship with someone this morning, and you could be in a relationship with someone different this afternoon or this evening. Google can't keep crawling that and changing as quickly as you change, at least not yet. So social media is more of a correlation, and if you think of it, if you put a press release out or you do any type of promotion for your company, you're then going to share it on your social media. So there's the correlation. But the actual driving force to make those search results change have to be on other vehicles or other sites, not on social media anymore. It just doesn't work. Last good tip, using restraining orders and copyrights. We talked about copyrights. We're now seeing restraining orders. So in certain cases, you have victims who take out restraining orders. And you've all heard of the revenge porn sites and all these things that people are being put on. Some states now have passed legislation. You can't be on those. We've been able to successfully use restraining orders to take things off the internet, and you can now take a restraining order on an email, on a username. So one of the things I want people to, really understand is, I think someone mentioned that heavy guy that in the basement that's ruining everyone's online reputation or what have you. We can identify them. Everything, and everything you do on the internet now is trackable and traceable. So getting those IPs and finding out where that's coming from is our job, and then understanding the purpose behind it. We had a client recently that on Wikipedia, they kept putting things up, taking them down, back and forth, and we finally had to get to the point where we were able to track down where that was coming from and what the motivation was. And once we did that, we were able to then work to understand what we had to do for that crisis. Okay. Try to move on, step set. Okay, cool. Removal techniques. So that's really what our main objective is. In any client that comes in, we always look for removal first. Removal should always be the first and primary option when looking to restore someone's online reputation. By taking an investigative approach, our team works to uncover the source of the crisis and try to permanently remove it, which prevents further occurrences. So getting back to the media, we had a client in Chicago and had a crisis, and in this case, all charges were dropped versus just a crisis where there were no charges. And we went to the paper and we asked for those articles to be removed. And the response you now get from the parent company or from the paper is that's no longer their policy. You'll get that a lot. That's not our policy. In one case, it was violating the victim's rights. We were able to show that, and they were removed. In another case, you can go to a site called the Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine can show you all of the articles that used to be out on the internet. So we had someone do some research and find 5, 6, or 7 articles of someone with a similar charge in the same paper that was there at one point and is no longer there. And then we could present to the paper and say, we understand your policy, we have it here in writing, we also understand what we're seeing. Legal papers are signed back and forth, there's no other thing done, and everything's removed. So question everything. We had a veteran. We work a lot with veterans. And he was portrayed wrongly in a paper to the point where they took pictures from an auto accident and put them in this incident. So they weren't even the right pictures. The paper this one paper refused to remove the article. And all charges were dropped again on our client. There was a veterans breakfast put on by the paper. And the paper was approached asking how they could be putting on a veterans breakfast, be helping veterans, but yet not this individual case. And that individual case was then looked at, and that was removed. So I'm not saying it can be removed in every situation. What I'm saying is it's worthwhile looking at the situation, and I think the newspapers are starting to understand the impact not just to the business or the individual, but to the family members. And so when there's a victim involved, and if that victim's address or that victim's name is mentioned, you have the right to go and get that out of the paper. Okay, suppression. So now we can't remove it. We've tried all attempts. When suppression is needed, our reputation management specialists take a 3-pronged approach to restore, promote, and protect a business's reputation. Suppression is the most popular method of reputation management, as it not only pushes down the unwanted information, but it adds a layer of protection for future articles, images, links from showing up. So what is suppression? Depending if it's an individual, a brand, or a business, suppression is really when you're looking at the most positive sites out there and you're driving links and you're promoting them and giving them a higher page authority and domain authority to be more relevant to yourself or your brand. And by doing that, it's almost like making a firewall against anything else that's coming up. So this is something that we do a lot of. This is where the negative keyword analysis comes in. This is where taking a look, and each individual is different. Someone with a unique name, and there's no one else out there with that name, can be a lot more work to to fix versus someone that might have a more common name. And that's just the way it is in the business at the moment. Okay, mission statement. I thought this was interesting. Google's mission statement: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That's their mission statement. So when you break it down, you start to understand what they're trying to do and all the challenges they have up. So the same thing where, oh my God, the media, it's the same thing we hear, oh my God, it's Google. Google's not trying to hurt you, they're just trying to figure out what is important in your world, and how to, not just what's important to you, but what's important to people who are searching you. Reputation 911's mission statement: to make you look good online by organizing and prioritizing your information on Google. Communicating with Google. So we look at it as more we're communicating with Google on your behalf. Understanding how Google search engines work: there's an index, there's a spider that then crawls, so you have this, just like at Dun & Bradstreet, or you're looking through all the index, same thing here. You have an index, you have a spider, and then you have an algorithm that's ever-changing. We take the time to understand how you should look online and then communicate that on your behalf to Google. Some of the things that means, if you have an article and people go and click on it and click off, it might show to Google there was no interest. You have another article where people are reading the entire article and clicking the links on that article to other articles, that's showing the interest, and that's what's bringing that up. So it is really important to put things out there that are directly correlated to the brand or the individual and of interest. That's what's worked with the Doctors Without Borders, because that was something that people were very interested in at that time. Told you we'd get to Google Autocomplete or Autosuggest. This is a snapshot of our Autosuggest, and it's important for everyone to look and see what their brand is being associated with. So for us, it's business reputation, it's my online reputation, it's personal reputation, it's reputation management. This is what we do, so Google has a good idea of what we're doing. If you're an attorney or you're a dentist and you don't see things that relate to your brand, there's a disconnect, and we would rather repair or restore that disconnect before a crisis happens, because then we can leverage what's there versus trying to reprogram something after the fact. If you were to search your name right now, Google did this this year. In the bottom right-hand corner of all the auto-suggests, so in the bottom right-hand corner, right here, it will say report an inappropriate prediction. That inappropriate prediction could be anything that's up there. I will tell you, if there are enough search results that are on that crisis, on that first page, reporting that inappropriate prediction might make things worse, not better. So ideally, what you want to do is remove or suppress that information. Google takes into account the first, second, and a little of the third page to what goes on that autocomplete or searches related. So you like to use this later, not early on. And again, same thing with the searches related. So you can see, you take a look at your own individual searches and you can see what you're being associated with. If it makes sense to your brand, then you know you've got it spot on. If it doesn't, or you don't have any, again, that's something we come in and can work with. Yeah?
Just curious. I think we get this with information, yeah, we see affirmation. So, they're going to find it, right? Just out of curiosity and your question, any commentary on how
Yep.
just to give
Great question. So I'm going to relate that back to the newspaper, the media. We all have the front page, the back page. So anyone who's searching you, 100% of the people are going to at least look at the top fold. That first, there's 10 results on every page. Sometimes those results are images, so you could have 9 results and images. 100% of people are going to look at that top section. And then somewhere around 80% are going to scroll down and see the first page. And a lot of people that are searching, whoever they're searching for, if they find what they're looking for, they stop, they click on it, they're done. And what we hear a lot of times when we have individuals coming to us and saying, look, I'm trying to get a job, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, it might be that there's someone else with their name that has unfortunately had a crisis or had done something, and they're not getting a job because people are stopping right on that page and they are associating that person with them, or they're just not finding any information at all. The second page is usually, you're looking at that other 20%. So I'm going to that second page. After that, it's really only if someone's looking for something and they're not finding it and they keep going. And when they are going for those extra pages, they then also will go back and start clicking on the searches related or put in their own search as well. Yeah. Questions? I finished. Sure, absolutely.
You talk a lot about Google's search engine. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's not the only search engine out there.
Great question. Great question. So Google is not the only search engine out there. However, Bing, Yahoo, a lot of the other search engines will follow Google. So we find that when we start to do our work, we know if we're on track if it shows up in Google or Bing first. So if Bing or Yahoo. So if Bing or Yahoo is starting to see good results, usually we tell the client, hey, we got Bing and Yahoo starting to clean up. The response we hear right away is, I don't care about Bing and Yahoo, I want Google clean. So that's the one I focus on, but absolutely we are looking at all the different search engines, and sometimes Google has a webmaster and you can submit your website and things to Google Webmaster and get that crawled. And sometimes that's one of the things I wanted to talk about too. We can do an evaluation just on your website. We recently had a firm where they had 6 or 7 different practices, and all those practices were on their home page instead of individual pages. So if for instance, if you did divorce law or whatever, you would have your own page for that. Why that's important is then those individual pages would show in search instead of now you're 10 pages versus just 1. But that is an excellent question, and we do work with all the search engines. But I think where Yahoo and Bing differ is it's like what we were working on with reputation management, say 5 or 6 years ago, where if you get it out there, they'll take it, they'll go with it. So reputation management over the last 5 years has changed a lot. What has changed is you can no longer just throw it against the wall or make a lot of sites and try to see if that sticks. You now have to show a correlation. And Google cares more about what others are saying about you than they care about what you are saying. And they had a recent update, it was called the OWL update, and what it was to get rid of fake news. So by getting rid of fake news, that was something that we also had to take a look at and understand what they were trying to accomplish to make sure, and we thought we had it for a minute. We were like, okay, so if this crisis is now gone and it's fake news, can't we just classify that as fake news and have it go away? But it didn't work that way. I was hoping it would. But no, good question, and I did. I talked all about Google, so I'm glad we can work on any search engine, but usually what we're doing, Google's the last one to clean up. Other questions? Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, great question. And it is one of the most difficult things about scaling up as a business right now, because our business is 90% back end and 10% front end. For a few reasons. One, there's some best practices, and we have to be careful when we're working with someone. We don't want to defraud the consumer. You have a weight loss pill. Hey, we had a bad batch. Can you clean us up? We're a startup. No problem. You can see right away there's another bad batch. Should have asked, have you ever had a good batch? Once you find that out. So that is one aspect. The other aspect is, what is the presence online already, the uniqueness of the name, and the impact that's happening, and the client's expectation to time. So one of the things that we changed a little bit in how we worked a few years ago was we went from talking about date of contract. When we sign up, 1 year from date of contract, we guarantee our results. And an attorney who was our client said, well, Bill, if you're guaranteeing your results for a year, but it took you 6 months to clean them up, I really only have a 6-month guarantee. I said, you're absolutely right. So with that, we now guarantee from 1 year from date of clean. And where we differ a little from other firms is it's not about what you make or what you don't make. You're not, here's the patient, I'm going to cut off all his arms, I think I saved him. You have to go in strategically. And so with that, it is a partnership with the client because you have to figure out what's best for them. You can't just, do it what you think works. It has to be within how they're comfortable portraying themselves as well, and it has to be connected right. Can't look cheesy. So the way we usually charge is we'll take a look at a few things that the client is looking at as far as how quickly do they need this done, and are they tying our hands behind our back? I don't want a website, I don't want anything out there on me, but get this all gone. So now you're not giving me any tools to work with. That is actually going to be more expensive, which doesn't make sense than if we were able to build websites and put content out there. So that goes into it. But we do have, two different types of plans. For an individual, it's usually either a one-time payment or a payment, a monthly that fits into a payment plan because it's a one-time occurrence. So there's a one-time occurrence. This isn't going to happen again. And we usually guarantee, sometimes we have clients that come to us and they say, there's going to be a couple more articles that come out about this. So we include that. As long as it's from the same incident, it's all covered because we're going to disassociate from it. However, if there's a new incident, had a DUI, something else came out that was different from what we've already worked on, that's where a new charge could come out. A business, on the other hand, could have an upfront restore fee if they don't have an online presence, or if they already do, then we might just go enter into a monthly contract with them where each month it's our job, an ongoing process to keep them clean or to keep, I like to say, accurate. I like to say we're going to keep them accurate, keep the information that is relevant to them there. So there are some different pricing models, but again, it's very individual depending. I will tell you, the removal can be more expensive up front to get done, but if someone then republishes a story or puts more out there, that's where things can get tough. And one thing about that, and 60 Minutes had a piece on this, was the mugshots. There was these sites that were almost like blackmailing sites where people would have a mugshot. A lot of it was down south where they had an arrest, they got a mugshot, and they were asked for $400 or $500 to remove that off their site. And they paid it, they were in a panic, they paid it. And then there's 7 or 8 other sites that one site owned, and now you had 7 mugshots the next day out there, and they wanted it again. So, we look at each case, and obviously our first thing is to do no harm. So in some cases like that, it'd be better just to suppress it back and not approach. Or if you do approach in a way that you make sure that instance isn't going to happen. And I will tell you one more thing. A lot of these sites that you find yourself on, you really do need to take a step back and not be in a panic, because without even knowing it, you'll make another profile. So you'll go to the site, you'll start filling in information, and all of a sudden there was a review or there was something you're trying to get rid of, and now you have another profile. That actually happened to one of our clients early on where she was just applying for a job at a funeral place or site, and the plugin published all of her private information. And it was very difficult. We actually did not charge that client. We just did the work because it was something we weren't sure we could do, but because you couldn't communicate with anyone. You literally had to communicate with the webmaster or the hosting company. So there's times where the opposition won't communicate with us, or we can't. So then you can do research and find out who's hosting that website and go to the hosting company or go above that and then bring that to them and have it taken down that way. So, yes?
I have another question.
Sure.
Kind of controversial
No,
in this setting, but
that's fine.
one of the concerns that I have, I'm an attorney and I investigate incidents and people and so forth, and I'm concerned that all of this effort to suppress and remove even truthful information impedes my investigations, and it also impedes, the availability of truthful information.
Right.
I suppose if you want to manage your reputation, you want to behave in a way that you don't get the bad reputation. So I guess my question to you is, how do you, or do you, do any kind of analysis as to, what is the actual truth? Do you take all customers that come your way?
Excellent question, and that's a moving target. When we started this company, we feel that every single person out there, we're all going to have some type of crisis in our life, and we hope that's just going to be, a small chapter and not the entire book that's going to be out there forever. Our feeling, and I think you've heard me throughout this conference saying, truthful, accurate information, it was dismissed. So if you have a client that has an accusation, I think we talked about this in the last panel, you're innocent until proven guilty, but yet online you're guilty until proven innocent. So what we like to be able to do is help that person who's saying they're innocent, all the facts look like they are, help them defend themselves online and put their best foot forward while we're doing that. That being said, and we've had cases like this where we've been told that, and then there's a plea of guilty or whatever. We stop work. It's in our contract. We stop work right at that point. So, excellent question. And just like I said about defrauding, I mean, we're not going to make an axe murderer look like Goldilocks and put anyone in there. I will also tell you is there is so much low-hanging fruit in this business right now. We're just at the beginning stages. So it makes no sense to go out there and go into that realm. At the same time, though, I understand your concern is what is right, what is not right, and we see it too. And so we have agencies that call us and say, hey, can you go out and find out what's out there, what's not, how can you do these searches? So it is looking at trying to stay true to the individual, the brand, the persona, and I really feel bad for people like this woman who was just brought up on a photo, and then they thought she was at this thing and she wasn't, and everyone's coming at her, and it's affecting the family, it's affecting everyone else. Likewise, yes, is there an instance where the restaurant down the street had a bad day and someone had a bad burger? Yes. Should that restaurant go out of business for that? No. So there's levels of it, and with that, we want to be able, to help them get back on track. And it's the same with working with a lot of startups. But you do have to ask yourself, because we are, a reflection of what we're putting out there for people, and we want to feel good about it too. So.
Right, and basically, both sides can abuse the whole process, the internet and so forth, and it's a balance.
It is, and when you think about it, Google it's kind of like a robot, it's just trying to put out, and that's why I had that slide, it's trying to put out what it thinks is accurate. And so, a lot of, someone asked a question earlier as far, I think it was up there, as far as what sites are the most authentic, or in Google's eyes, they're not looking at that as much. They're looking at which ones are getting the most traffic. And one of the key terms is dwell, D-W-E-L-L, and that's why you see videos now and images. The longer you dwell on a site, the more relevant it becomes in Google's eyes. So if people are on that site longer, and that's why you see links and reading and everything, and then that gives us more. So we're pretty good at understanding what we're hearing and what we're doing. I will tell you right now, probably 3 out of every 10 clients that come into us, we bring on board. And not all of it is because some of it's just not a right fit, or it's not the right expectation, or it's just something that, might go to someone else. So, okay? Oh, you're welcome. Yes? Yep. Yeah, so obviously Googling yourself is important. Taking a look at your competitors maybe to see what's going on with them. We do evaluations for clients and can give them a report, say, of their first 3 pages, their first 30 results, and it shows, it's like an x-ray behind what those search results are. So we can show you all the links that are going to each one of those sites, who's linking to them, who has interest in them. And it also gives you that statement in time. So say you're a divorce attorney and you file a divorce, and next thing you know, your client's results are getting tarnished. You have proof of what it was before that. But in that scenario, taking a look at yourself and your search results, you can also see how many other people have your name, how many other searches are being done, how susceptible am I to a crisis if one was to hit today. And I think the biggest thing is people use this term a little different, but what social equity do you have out there that you can leverage? So we look at social equity as, what sites do you have? Your LinkedIn, your website, different domains. And I will tell you now, coming towards the end of the year, each year news turns over the new year. It's great when you can get 4 or 5 or 6 domains in your name with a 2018 handle, so if you're going into 2019, it shows a little more authority. So just like, I think some people felt a while back that, hey, I'm not on the internet, I want to be off, I'm fine. Unfortunately, people can tag you, people can talk about you, so you do have to be a little more proactive. And you don't have to have that full online presence, but you have to have the ability to turn to it and have it in place so you can leverage it when you need it. So we can do reports of showing you a little bit more of here's what we see as something positive and here's something where you might want to distance yourself or suppress a little. So good question. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.